Imagine spending $9 million on a luxury clubhouse, only to watch floodwater come rushing through the front doors. That sounds impossible. But according to the property records and drainage maps in this story, the HOA had one enormous problem. They built their dream clubhouse on land that was never supposed to be developed, and I was the property owner who had been warning them about it. My name is Daniel, and I inherited a large piece of rural property bordering an upscale HOA community. For years, most of the land was used as a natural flood basin. When heavy rain came down from the hills, the water had somewhere to go. It spread across the low ground, slowed down, and eventually drained toward a creek. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Then the HOA decided they wanted a clubhouse, not a small community hall. They wanted a massive luxury facility with a swimming pool, event rooms, landscape grounds, parking, and an expensive entrance. The estimated project cost? $9 million. At first, I didn't care. It was their money. But then I saw the construction plans. The clubhouse was sitting directly across the natural drainage path. I contacted the HOA and told them exactly what I saw. I even showed them the old survey maps. The area wasn't just lowland. It was part of the property's natural flood control system. Their response? They told me their engineers had approved everything. The HOA president basically laughed at my concerns. She said, "We've built an entire community here. We know what we're doing." I wasn't convinced, so I documented everything. I photographed the drainage channels. I kept copies of the old maps, and I recorded every major construction change I could see from my property. Then the clubhouse was completed. It looked incredible. Stone columns, huge glass windows, a massive front entrance, perfect landscaping. The HOA president proudly announced that the community had created one of the finest clubhouses in the county. There was just one problem. The next major storm was coming. The weather forecast predicted several inches of rain. I remember the old drainage maps, and I knew exactly where that water would try to go. The rain started overnight. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then the creek began rising. Water started moving across the fields. The natural basin began filling, and the new clubhouse was sitting directly in its path. By sunrise, the HOA's beautiful landscaping was underwater. The parking lot became a giant pool, and then the water reached the building. Residents started recording videos. People were shouting. Cars were being moved to higher ground. But the worst was still coming. A powerful surge of water moved toward the clubhouse, and suddenly, water rushed through the front doors. The same entrance they had advertised as the centerpiece of their $9 million facility was now acting like a drain. Water flooded the lobby. Furniture floated across the floor. Electrical systems were being shut down. The expensive flooring was destroyed. And the HOA's dream clubhouse was taking thousands of dollars in damage every minute. But then something even more important happened. The flood water didn't stop at the clubhouse. Because a natural drainage route had been blocked, the water began spreading into areas that had never flooded like this before. Residents who had dismissed my warnings suddenly wanted answers, and the HOA board started pointing fingers. The president blamed the engineers. The engineers blamed the weather. Contractors blamed the drainage system. But the old maps told a different story. The flood basin had existed long before the clubhouse, and I had warned them before construction was completed. When the insurance investigators arrived, they started asking questions. Why was the building constructed there? Were the original drainage patterns documented? Who approved the changes? And most importantly, did the HOA know this area was part of a natural flood path? I handed over the documents I had collected, old surveys, property records, photographs, and copies of my written warnings. The investigators went through everything. Eventually, the HOA had to face a reality they couldn't argue with. The water hadn't suddenly appeared. The storm hadn't magically created a flood basin. The water was simply following the path it had followed for decades. The clubhouse had been built directly in the way, and that $9 million mistake had consequences. Repairs were estimated in the millions. The community faced higher insurance costs. Emergency drainage work became necessary, And the HOA board suddenly had to explain to angry homeowners why their luxury clubhouse had become one of the most expensive flooding disasters in the community's history. As for me, I stood outside my property after the storm and watched the water slowly retreat. The land looked completely different, but one thing hadn't changed. The basin had done exactly what it was supposed to do. It collected the water, it slowed the flow, and it protected the surrounding land. The only thing that had changed was the HOA's decision to put a $9 million building in its path. The lesson was simple. You can spend millions on beautiful buildings. You can hire expensive contractors. You can put up fancy signs and call something progress. But you can't negotiate with gravity. And you definitely can't tell water where it isn't allowed to go. The HOA thought they were building their dream clubhouse. Instead, they built a monument to ignoring the land beneath them. And when the water finally came, the land remembered exactly where it was supposed to go. If you enjoyed this HOA story, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from.